lot of businesses, unfortunately, in property management just have a terrible reputation here.
Very stressful to work with your partner because all the problems from the business you literally take home.
Don't ever take your business to the bedroom.
In the moments that we are trying to ascend to something new, there's a lot of inward and outward pressure.
You don't really plan date nights. Like, I'm the one planning them. It takes a lot of work.
All right, guys. So welcome to the Confidant podcast. So this podcast is here to talk about things real estate related, but as well as lifestyle, personal, relationships, friendships, and other things kind of just in our life in general, I would say. But it's always going to be based off of real estate related concept, let's just say, right? Wow, that was a hard word for me to get out today, apparently. But anyways, we're going to roll with it. So Chloe has done us, my beautiful wife has done us the amazing favor of talking about or writing down and scripting some kind of topics that she feels that she gets a lot of questions from. Isn't that like the origin, is that we get some questions from people that ask us certain things, and it's not like somebody asked me and nobody ever asked. Like, some people have asked us these things,
or
right?
like claimed us to be a certain way. So for me, I want to use this time and set like just a platform, because I think people see us coming in and they're like, oh, they're super focused on business. And I think a lot of it has to stem from who we are as individuals and, you know, the reason we are the way we are, but also on a personal level. I think that our clients, our friends, and sometimes even our family should know where we're at on like the personal side of it all. But yeah, I really wanted to dive in a little deeper and just show like what our relationship is like, aside from work.
So for some of you guys who know us, let's talk. We're talking to you, but also we're talking to the people who are tuning in for the first time. Who are we? We are just let's say a couple. We've been married for what, 6 years now?
Yeah, we're making 6 years, and we've been together for good job. I'm proud of you. Right. We've been together for 15 years.
15 years together, 6 years married, and we basically have a small family. We run multiple businesses. We're real estate investors. We have a property management company and a real estate company, and we have several investments that we manage and own. And we tend to want to steward our finances in a godly centered way, but also very focused on just making sure that we're financially responsible. And I think that in and of itself has kind of gained or garnered attention from maybe our close circle of just people asking us. I wouldn't say really for advice, but maybe just kind of like, hey, what's the secret? Like, what is it that you guys are doing? And I think this could have the danger of potentially coming off as very preachy, which I don't want it to come off that way, because I do want to preface that if you're tuning in, we are by no means experts in subject matters of personal finance or things of that nature. We are experts in real estate. So if you have questions about real estate, then definitely ask us. Nor do we think that our way is the only way of doing things. There's probably multiple ways, but I think that where this podcast really stems from is that this is what has worked for us. Some people have also liked or thought that this process could potentially work for them. So if you find yourself in a position where real estate is something that you want to use to maximize your financial prowess, if you will, and you want to use that, and you have a marriage or a couple, or you're in a couple, or you have a relationship and you want to see how you can partner together to do that collectively, then maybe this podcast would probably bring you some value. Does that sound fair?
It sounds great.
Okay, cool.
Thanks,
so anyways,
thanks for that introduction.
It's a nice disclaimer.
No, it's important.
So why don't we tell people how we got here?
From our personal side, right?
Yeah,
so Steven and I, so just to give you a brief on who we are and where we came from together and even independently. Steven and I met back in 2009. We were really good friends. We had mutual friends, and it just so happened that it happened right after high school. And then, he had the guts to ask me out to be his girlfriend, and it sort of just pivoted from there. We pretty much grew up together. I would say that all of our college years, and then even after that in our professional, like coming in, doing internships, we saw each other in the highest highs and the lowest lows. And that's something that I'm really proud of, because I ended up with my best friend. It did start from a friendship. It's really not like how it is nowadays. So it's something that I hold very dear to my heart. And then, once we started, dating, and then we moved in together, Steven got into real estate, which is also really scary, because there was no longer a two salary household. It was just like, okay, well, it's based on sales. And so I sort of pushed him to go out, and he just had this dream. I remember we were in New York City, and he looks out and he's like, I think I want to get into real estate. And I remember looking at him, and we were in a really bad financial position. And I was working for a nonprofit at that point.
Yeah.
And we really only had like one salary. And I was like, go do it. Like, go for it. You know, we're young, like we'll figure it out. And so he did that. He passed the test. He became rookie of the year his first year, and he just blew up from then on. And then later on, between that process, we got married. And then COVID happened, and between COVID, I got my license. It's sort of funny because I ended up being his assistant. And so he was like, I need your help. I was doing events, and I was like, okay, fine, I'll help you. And then I ended up loving it. And I thought it was such a like serious thing to do, like real estate, how boring. And I ended up really loving it. And then, yeah, I got into it. I got my license. I got my own clients, and then COVID hit. We lost all our clients. And then it just like came back in. And so, yeah, after that, Steven was like, I want to invest in properties. I'm like, great. So I guess I would always say I'm always like the one that's like, let's do it. And then we'll figure it out. I'm very operational. If you know me, you know that I'm like very systems and like organization. And Steven is like a visionary. He has these ideas, and I, you know, luckily I'm a person that's like, okay, sometimes I'm a little scared, but I'm like, I'll roll with it. And then we opened up Confidant Property Management. And then Confidant really came out of just, you know, just this idea of like, we don't really trust anybody else to manage our properties like we would. Like, we don't think a lot of businesses, unfortunately, in property management just have a terrible reputation here in Miami. And we saw ourselves doing it better. So that's just something that we got into. And then very organically, after how many properties did we have?
Well, we currently have 14 going on.
But back then, I think it was like two or three properties we were managing. We had Garfield.
Well, rather doors. 14 doors going on to another 2 now. But at that time, I think we had maybe 4.
Yeah,
5.
so we had like 4 doors, and I was like, okay, and dealing with the complaints and everything. And then I told Steven, I'm like, this is like a full-time job. So at that point, I was pregnant. I took a step back in like the full sales part. He did that. And yeah, we had Isabel, who was in our team now as the Vargas team, as an agent. We completely launched that business, and the rest is history. Like, CPM is sort of came very organically. Investors just really started trusting our opinion. They're like, what do you do for property management? We're like, we actually manage properties, and it just comes in that way. And that's really how we've grown our business up to this point. But not to say that through that entire process that I just went through, that it wasn't, you know, like difficult. Like, of course, we had our trials and tribulations. We had different phases of our lives where one person was picking up the slack than the other person at home or at work. So that's really why I wanted to dive into this podcast, because I think people just play us out to be like, oh, you know, they work together. It's so great. And like, it's like a fairy tale. I wish I can work with my significant other. And it goes way deeper than that on an emotional, physical level. In this podcast, we're going to talk a lot about like mental health, relationships with other individuals, family members, relationships between ourselves, or relationship with God. Like, for us, and that's really what we're going to highlight, is God is at the forefront of everything when it comes to our marriage and our relationships. Hopefully we have guests on this podcast, and we could dive in with other couples who are similar to us, others that aren't, maybe single people in the community, that are just, you know, seeking not like guidance, but just seeking like a word, you know, seeking arrangements. No, because like we talk to people that are single, and they're like, how do you do it? And I'm like, there's no secret.
So you cast a lot of vision for this podcast. If you guys want to definitely see any of those things, let us know in the comment section. And click that subscribe button if you found any value. I'm such a YouTuber. I'm not
so annoying.
I'm not a YouTuber.
But you know what's so funny? I actually do click the subscribe button.
Yeah, when people say like,
I'm like, oh, you're right. I'm sorry. Like, how am I watching your video and not giving you like any kudos?
Right. Yeah. The subscribe button is funny. It's like, I haven't gotten enough value to click this
or
button.
Like it. Just like it. Comment.
Like,
you know, leave a nice comment.
No. You took 4 hours to make this video. You did not deserve this 0.2 seconds of my life. Anyways. Yeah, there's a lot of things. I think the word power couple is used a lot by, you know, the zeitgeist and culture and our friends. It's such a cringy word. I hate the word power couple.
Yeah, me too. I feel like when people say it, I'm like, oh. Yeah. And I know they're coming from a good place.
Yeah, of course.
So I don't, like, I'm like, oh, that's sweet. But then a part of me is like, I don't feel like that at all. Like, I feel like it's so Miami.
I feel like we're just so honed into what we're doing that we lift our head and we resurface, and we're just like, yeah, I guess we've accomplished some cool stuff. But at the same time, I don't think that, as I've gotten older, I've definitely felt the need that of gloating and showing off and like having that, you know, professed to the world is kind of cringy to me.
Yeah.
And I used to not be like that. And now it's so cliche, but
It's like,
as you've
brother,
gotten
ew,
older,
you know the
yeah,
video?
it's right. I've never seen that video,
You
but
have to
it definitely feels like
brother,
that video.
ew. Yeah.
It's cliche, but now as we get older, I really just want peace.
Yeah.
However, you do have to let people know what it is you're doing, because we live in a world that you quickly could be forgotten. And in a industry such as real estate, I always tell, especially the agents who work in our team, you know, you have to, success begets success. That's that quote. So it's like, whatever thing you're doing, or whatever hill you've conquered or mountain you've climbed or whatever it is, you want to profess that to the world, because they need to know that you're also doing cool things, because that also helps them to make a decision that they want to use you. Because if we're being honest, people want to make sure they use people who have experience and who have a high likelihood of getting them the results that they want. And so you need to showcase those results, but in a way where it doesn't come off as braggadocious. At least for me, it's not about doing that. It's just about showing like, hey, we still exist, guys. We're still doing business. We're still helping our clients find and sell homes, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of that process. But I think one of the topics that you've talked to me about before the podcast was what it's like working with your significant other. And I know we've talked about this in other podcasts with the team, but I think you and I probably haven't had that conversation in depth of like, what does it mean to work with your significant other? And I think at times it's amazing. It's like, you and I row in the same direction. We very rarely actually have debates as to why are we doing this, where are we going. I think we should do this. But like, we're usually pretty in sync all the time, which I think it's great. And I think, but naturally, I think we were in sync even before we. I had to say that.
We're just gonna have like little snippets.
Yeah, we were in. Taylor, edit that. No, I'm kidding. So we were in sync before we got into real estate. I just think our life was like, we didn't like going to clubs. We didn't like, events and crowded things. Like, we were always in sync with just how we wanted to live our life. So when we jumped into business together, it was kind of like, it was easy. But
I feel like I'm going to get really emotional in this podcast.
Why?
Because it's so true. Like, I think that we have had such highs of highs, but we've had really lows. And I think that people they paint us to be like, just like anybody. I think social media just glamorizes a lot of things, and it's really not that. But I think also when we started CPM, we were in a very dark place. I had postpartum depression when we really launched CPM. And our marriage like sort of took a hit, right? You have this new human being who's incredibly small. And then you have me doing this for the first time, a traumatic birth. And then you that is just trying to keep everything afloat and run a business at the same time. But I also think it's identity, right? I think because we've been together for so long, we started off as kids. Like, I think I had a job, right? When we met, you didn't have a job. You had never worked a day in your life. You were like, no, I'm going to like do this, enjoy college life, whatever that was. Enjoy my friends party, like what every 19, 18-year-old does in Miami at that point. But I was always like really headstrong of like, okay, well, I got to produce and I want to grow and I have this vision of what I want to be. And the great part about you is like, you always knew you wanted that, but you knew that it was going to come at its own time. And I always felt like, no, I have to do it now. And so we were very different growing up. Like, I know that I would always say like, I was, what is it? The teacher's pet? And you were like
the kid who sits in the back of the class.
Sits in the back and has conversations and doesn't care, but is super smart, doesn't really have to try in school to pass. So I don't know. I just think that it flourished into something beautiful. But I definitely want to tie this to like what do you think a power couple actually means? Like when you hear that word, why does it trigger us in a sense? Like, why is it like, like what other word can we use? And like, what do you think when you hear the word power couple?
I just think power couple to me is like very secular, cultural. Like it just means that you're making a lot of money. And I think that there's so much to being
and being seen, basically.
And being seen, right? And just glamorizing just the fact that you have a lot of material possessions. And to me, a power couple, when I wouldn't use the word power couple, but just like a relationship that I admire is so much deeper than just being successful and just having money, because I think that there's a lot of relationships that I wouldn't trade places with that are, far more successful than us.
Yeah.
But I just would never trade places with them in the relational sense. Like, I would not want your relationship, but it's cool that I guess you have a successful business, right? But to me, it's just the business is great because, you know, we have to eat, we have to survive, we have to take care of our kids and provide for them. But I would trade it all to like be with you and with Harrison and just be fine, right? And if we didn't have the business, then I'm fine if I have you. But I couldn't have the other. I couldn't.
Well, we've said that, right? I feel like we've had that conversation where, you know, things happen and you have arguments and you're like, I don't want this. Like, if this is what's got the cost of it, I will remove all these properties and like get rid of everything. We can live on an island and it's just us. Like, we have to come to a meeting of the minds that is the root of everything. It's God, us, and then everything else is just like secondary.
Yeah.
And I think that we forget that sometimes, like when we're in real deep into it, we're like, oh, like what does our day look like? Right? Like every day we come in, it's like, it's very structured. Like we work out in the morning, you have Harrison, you spend a couple of minutes, like maybe an hour with him. I prep his breakfast, I go work out, I come in, and it's very like robotic to a point. But I think the in-betweens matter, right? Like when we wake up in the morning, you know, like you rub my back, you say good morning. We do our, what is it? Our 7-second hold.
Our 7-second hug. Because we read an article that says that it reduces
stress and anxiety.
After 7 seconds, we're like 7-second hug.
You know,
we usually go more than 7 seconds after.
Yeah, we do. And then, you know, just like do our recap. I know you used to listen to your podcast in the morning. You don't do that anymore. Now we actually like have a conversation and we just dive into our day, right? And then throughout the day, like we'll do like little touches, like just letting you know that we're here for each other. Because we didn't do that. I think for a little bit, like it got a little cold. Like it was just very corporate. Like we got to work. We got to send offers. We got to, you know, you're going to go do showings most of the day. And now we do check-ins. Like we'll send like random text messages. I have lunch ready. Luckily we work from home where I can prep lunch.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we definitely try our best to do that. And there's always room for improvement, especially for me, because I get very lost and I sometimes forget to have lunch. And so I'm like, and I'm lucky to have you because you remind, oh my God, look at us getting so... But,
it's part of the podcast.
Yeah, it's part of the podcast. But look, I think that there's a lot of moments where it's awesome. Yeah. But there's also a lot of moments where it's very stressful to work with your partner because all the problems from the business you literally take home. And sometimes I catch us having conversations where I literally say, I'm like, can we talk anything other than business? And sometimes it's hard for us to do that because either we're super excited about the projects we're working on and we want to tell each other about our side because we work on 2 different sides of the businesses. So it's not like we're both doing the same thing all the time. So you want to fill me in, I want to fill you in, or we just have these stressors because something's going on. There's a problem that we need to solve. And although, and it may be on your side of the business, so you're asking me for advice or vice versa. So sometimes it is very stressful, although I wouldn't change it for the world just because I do love the way that we've built our life. Or how God has allowed us to build our life is better yet. But it's still something that is without, I feel like our capacity is always being tested and always being stretched. And then when you reach another level, whatever level that may be, whatever mark that you're trying to hit requires another version of you to kind of get ready. And sometimes you bash your head against the wall because you're not that version yet. And so you're still learning, you're still pruning yourself to basically be like, okay, I need to be a little bit more patient, a little bit more gracious. I need to have a little bit, probably more intelligence, more skill sets. I need to learn something that I haven't wanted to learn or I put off for a while. And so those are like the hard moments where you're saying there's a lot of lows. I think a lot of the lows happen in the moments that we are trying to ascend to something new. There's a lot of inward and outward pressure of like, you need to do these things in order to get here. Because if you continue to do what you're doing, you're not going to get where you want. And that only breeds resentment because you're so frustrated about, well, I'm doing all this work, I'm working all these hours, and yet we're kind of just treading water here. What's going on? And so that does put pressure in our relationship, and I feel it sometimes. But I love being an entrepreneur. I love that you love being an entrepreneur, and I love working and building on something together. And so my advice, whenever somebody asks us, how do you guys work together? Is it easy to work together? It's absolutely not easy, but I think it's easier for us because it comes innate in our personality that we want to build together.
You know, it's so good that you say that because I remember when we first got married and and then we got into business together. And I remember your mom saying to me, don't ever take your business to the bedroom. And it's so funny because you come from entrepreneur parents. And so I love actually, I take a lot of what they say very seriously. Like I got into entrepreneurship and I started an event company and real estate because I got fired from a nonprofit. And a lot of people don't know that, but I got fired because there was no more funding, and it was really sad. And it was such a reality check because it was that weekend that I never forget this. It was the 10X conference, Grant Cardone, Atlanta Cardone. And my husband had gotten me a ticket and I couldn't go because I was working. Mm-hmm. And we had just gotten back from our honeymoon and I got fired. And I called my mother-in-law and she's dying hysterics, like so excited for us. And she's like, oh my God, you guys are going to do great. This is amazing. And in a way, it was like her reliving the moment that you and her and your dad got into business, and they still work together, which I think is great. But I take a lot of what they tell us very seriously and to heart because they've lived this, they've experienced it firsthand and they get to see it with us. So I don't know. I think it's a beautiful thing. And I do, listen to on an emotional level when she tells me about like love and like how to nurture our marriage. And one thing we don't do is travel without Harrison. Because I know that that's how couples release and they spend time together and date. But we really do try to date. At least we try to go on dates once or twice a week. Maybe do like a lunch date, a dinner date. We have to be better about it. But even traveling.
By the way, what's that sushi place we went to last?
Bondi?
Yeah, guys.
Bondi?
It's like an omakase place in Hyde Midtown. It was phenomenal. We had a great time. And I think the value that you get for...
The people. What are you talking about?
Yeah, the service.
The ambiance. The people are so nice. You would never expect that in Midtown. It's not like
super expensive how some of these places in Miami are.
Omakase style.
Right. But I thought it was great. Anyways, just a tidbit for you foodies out there who watch.
Tag Bondi.
Chloe and
I love Bondi. They're new. So like they would love, the push. But yeah, that was a date. I'm very proud of you because like I would tell you, you don't really plan date nights. Like I'm the one planning them. It takes a lot of work, planning everything else. And he did that and it was really nice. But yeah, that's it on that one. So how to establish boundaries to separate work from personal life?
That's hard. Establishing boundaries is hard because it's work.
Because it sort of dives into like what we were just talking about.
But also work is one of our favorite topics to talk about. And so it's like restricting yourself from doing that. Because, I love to work. I think I need to put limits on the amount of work that I do because sometimes I get to that wall where I'm just like completely burnt out. But I do love to work and my retirement would just be like working a lot less, but still working a lot.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Because I feel like when you don't work, you die.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, like especially
true.
if you're a very passionate person and you're visionary, Steven. Like, how do you expect yourself to be like, oh, I don't want to like envision anything else. I don't have plans for the future. Like, just live off my wealth. Like, that's not what life is all about. I think for us too, it's like giving back. I think that's a huge purpose is to people are like, oh, but like, when do you know it's enough? It's enough when God says it's enough. It's enough when like we feel like we're helping our community and we never feel like we're doing.
The quote that I always live by and kind of like where I need to check my heart posture is definitely like when people say how much money is enough money. The second that money replaces God, that's too much money.
Amen.
And so until that happens and you put God first and you tithe and you give back to community and charity. And I think you and I have spoken about being entrepreneurs. It's like we want to spend our first half of our life accumulating as much wealth as possible and being generous. And then our second half of our life giving it all away to other people, organizations. And I'm serious when I say that. Obviously, we want to make sure Harrison and our kids are taken care of and, leave them whatever we can so that they're set. But the majority of that, we're going to die. We can't take it with us. I'd rather just give it to other organizations or other people who can actually use it and kids, right? And so it's just like, if God has given us a skill set or he gives skill sets and talents to other people to like spread their gift and share it. I think our gift is probably, definitely being able to build businesses and help other people in the process, our team, our employees, our clients. And then at some point it should stretch out to the community and just strangers. And then you can help. And then if that's the way that we can help and provide value and probably in a way spread the gospel, then that's the way that we need to do it because that's what we know how to do. And I did hear a quote there where somebody said, that you're called to do something by God when you feel that everybody should do that thing that you want to do.
Who said that?
I don't know.
It was
I'm sorry to give credit.
I remember you sent it to me and I was like, that's so true because I do feel like we're always a little pushy on things. We're like, we need to invest.
We're always pushing like, you should invest. You should start your own business. And then I'm like, that's probably what we're called to do because we feel everyone should do it. But somebody else may be like, I don't want to start a business, right? But they may feel that everybody should like go to charities and give their time and stuff like that, which we don't do as much as we'd want to. So that, but they're probably like, I don't get why people don't go to mission trips in like the middle of like Brazil. Like, I don't understand why people don't do that. Well, then you're called to do that, right? So I think that we are just kind of learning. And I think the biggest thing in our relationship as being a couple that does business together is probably understanding that we don't know a lot. And we're just trying to get around people who are a few steps ahead of us to learn, and then probably turn around and help other people that, you know, because I spend a lot of my time, and you've seen me with other people who reach out. I have a hard time, and I know you always tell me like, you're busy. It's hard for like, you shouldn't be giving your time so easily. When somebody ever messages me or DMs me and they're like, hey, can you like grab a cup of coffee and I just want to pick your brain up. Part of me doesn't want to help them because I'm like, man, I'm so busy. Like, and then, but a large part of me always meets them or has a Zoom or has a call with them. And I want to like, just give them as much information because they're like young kids, right? And they're like, how do I get into real estate? I'm like, do this, do this, do
You're
this.
so good with that. And I love that you do that and I know that you want to start like a whole men's like godly program or something like entrepreneurship and God. I love that. I love that because I think it also shows who you are now and where we're at in our life. And I think if we don't show that and build the younger generation, like what is our purpose? Right? Because like we have Harrison, but like at some point he's going to be part of like the youth group, right?
Right.
My goal is to bring his friends into that and for him to build and hopefully find a godly woman and someone like, not that resembles me, but I mean, in a way, that's what men always look for, right? So I want to be a great example, not just for Harrison, but for the young women of our community. And I think that it starts here. I have seen, and I did want to dive into it a little deeper before we sign off, was like where relationships are now. I don't know much about this dating community. I do hear time and time again from like our single friends and like siblings and whatnot that it's tough out there and like people aren't valuing relationships how they used to, or they're really not building off of anything. Like there's no sense of foundation. Nothing digs deep from friendship.
Yeah.
How do you think that's going to impact Harrison or like the future generation? What are some key like tips that you can give to the men of this like newer generation and what they should be looking for like in a partner that's helped you, you know? Because I know it's like a tough question, but they come to you, right? These guys, these young guys that want to get into real estate come to you, but you're also noticing like they're single, they're doing it alone. And I know you're always asked like...
Well, the one thing that I always tell people, especially like in the single community, and I'm always just like, man, whenever somebody approaches me that they're want to build a business and they're young and all these things, I'm kind of like, you know, to me, it's great that you and I got together when we did at 18 years old, because in a funny way, and how do I say this without sounding like, I don't want this to come off the wrong way. I would tell people, I'm like, man, I'm so happy I had Chloe because I found somebody at such a young age that I knew I could build the life that I wanted.
We molded each other.
Yeah. Right. And we definitely molded each other in terms of our worldview and we helped each other. But I was like, but I also had no distraction. Like I had my girl and I was just focused on work, and that focus of not having to focus on anything like dating, girls, text messages, or like apps or things like that takes up a lot of your focus when you're young. And so I didn't have that focus taken away from me. So I had you, and I was like, great, I don't have to focus on like dating or finding somebody or whatever, or courting someone or whatever it is, right? At that time, I could just focus on going to work and working and building, and then coming back and spending time. Being
like, I'm not alone. I have somebody that I can lean on and sort of throw ideas to, and hopefully it sticks.
But for a young guy, it's like your time, when you don't have a lot of money, you have a lot of time.
Yeah.
And so when you have a lot of time and a big portion of that time is taken away from you in a distraction of like dating around, sleeping around, or whatever it is, it's going to affect the building of what you want to do with your future life. And I, at least from a young age, realized that I have all this time to not focus on anything other than building the life that I want. And so that, I think, kind of helped and propelled me tremendously, because I wasn't really interested in doing anything other than that. Now, it was a major plus that you were also interested in supporting that vision, because it's easy to say now when, you know, we have some fruits to show of that. But at the time, I didn't have anything to show you. I was like, we're barely making it, but I have this grand vision. I'm going to not go to college anymore. And I'm just going to start this 100% sales job. And you're like, that sounds really stupid, but sure. I'll like, you know, you weren't.
I didn't say that. I was like, I didn't say it sounded stupid.
No, what I
was
mean is
nervous because it's like a normal reaction.
You still supported the craziness of it
always.
Because even though you may not have believed in the idea
believed in
itself,
you.
you believed in me.
100%.
And you're like, I don't know if this is going to work, but I know you will try to figure it out.
Yeah.
And I believe that you will.
Yeah.
And I think that relationships now are too... Like there is a balance. You can't be too trusting and just be like, yeah, you should try a 19th time to try to make this work and go into debt
get more
again,
money.
right?
Yeah.
But if you feel like your significant other has the ingredients to be successful, you're like, man, this guy like lives, eats, and breathes this thing. Like he's constantly talking about it. You can tell he's passionate about it, and has tremendous work ethic and is disciplined. You can tell if people are disciplined in other areas of their life before they get into being an entrepreneur. I was disciplined in other areas of my life. Like if I was like, I'm not going to do this, I'm not going to do this. If I was like, I'm going to make my bed and organize my room every single day, I'm going to do that. I was just disciplined. And those little small things may not seem like a big deal, but really business is just made up of doing the small things right in across multiple different areas. Like those little small details in conjunction all build up to build this great thing. Like I always tell our team who manages our departments, I'm usually like, you have to think of your department as a small little business within an organization.
Yeah.
Like your little fiefdom, if you will, has to run extremely well. It has to have its own SOPs. It has to have its own hierarchy. It has to have its own process. It has to have its own framework. And it has to have a system in which you do this input and this output comes out of it. And it needs to be at a high standard all across the board. And you need to know where your department falls within the customer journey or the client journey of the entire business and how that affects the next department going over and where the departments meet, right? And so I'm like, when you think about it like that and you are that structured and making sure that your little fiefdom works in the rest, then you start noticing like the little small intricate details that you and I obsess over, which now we're talking about this onboarding process that we're doing, where every little thing is like scrutinized, like, what's the best value that our clients are getting? What's the first email that they see? What's the second email that they see? Who's the call that they're going to get on the fourth day? Like all those like small little details we like really are nuanced about because they matter, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know how I got off on that tangent.
No, and I think but you bring up a good point because you've always said you're like, oh, well, you know, there's a hierarchy, right? And I've grown to understand that as tough as it is because I've always worked for myself. But there is
That's
like when it comes to when it comes to our household, like I'm the boss. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
I always talk about
make
those
sure I
roles.
have our systems in check, our operations. Everybody has their roles. You know, I'm checking in, checking out. Like everyone understands what needs to be done. You get fed, you get your appointments done. But also when it comes to CPM, we're both co-founders. So there comes a point where, you know, you're the visionary and I have to listen to you. I'm like, okay, this is what it is. He has great points. And then I'll come in and be like, I don't think that's a good idea. What do you think about this?
Yeah.
And then we come to a meeting of the minds and we're like, okay, that makes sense. That's what works for us. And then even with real estate, you know, sometimes I lean on you. I'm like, should I be doing this in this sale? What should I do in this process? And so like, I love having you. And I never like to say I take it for granted, but maybe sometimes I do, like everything where you take a human being for granted because it's just, you expect it. And so I really wanted to use this podcast, not as like a therapy session, but it can
Kinda
be.
feels like that.
It can be, but it gives us the time to be together too. So I really love it. And that, you know, it sort of highlights who we are as individuals, but it gives us a moment on a Saturday when we're busy dealing with clients and home stuff and everything to just sit down together, you and I, and just have a very organic conversation on where we're at. Where we want to be, and maybe bring in people to the picture too and see where they are at. And maybe we can help somebody, maybe we don't. Maybe someone learns listening to this, and we can see where it goes from here. But yeah.
Okay.
This is podcast number 1. No, wait, episode 1?
I don't know. We've done a lot of podcasts. I stopped numbering them, but it's something.
It's more conversational. But if you guys have any
definitely
ideas.
in this type of format, it's episode 1 in this type of like husband and wife. We've never done one together. We've done one with teams, with guests and all that stuff. We've been part of other podcasts. So so anyways, guys, I think that would cover a good amount of what I think we wanted to talk about today.
Short, simple, and to the point.
If you found value in this podcast and you want to see more of this format and you want Chloe to be more part of this channel, which she, you know, makes appearances here and there, but you know, it's been hard to kind of get her to nail her down to an actual format, which I would love, but you know,
we'll see. We'll see what the followers and subscribers want.
If this gets a lot of engagement and Chloe feels that there's people who want to hear more about what we're doing, because there may be 2 people who are like, yeah, that sounds interesting. Nobody else cares.
Which is like your mom.
Yeah, my mom's gonna like this video, and your sister's gonna like this video, and maybe that's it, right? But if not, you know, if there's anybody else, we'd love to like continue to share if that's interesting. And also, by the way, share other things that are not just about us, because I don't really find us. No,
if there's like topics, like there's definitely some topics that we were just talking about, like domestic abuse and like relationships going sour, and where there was like sort of some idea that it was headed that way.
Oh, you had a great topic for our next episode, which I thought, which was like about frenemies, which is like or friends that that you've lost in your life, or friends that are in your life.
Friends or foes is the topic.
Friends or foes, or like friends that you've lost in your life and how that's happened, and then also like people that you have in your life that you're like, are they really a friend? Like, because they
exist, guys. Yeah. They exist, and then how to handle it.
Yeah, how to handle it, and
when do you know
personal things. So if you want to see that video,
dives back into real estate, I promise.
And somehow it goes into real estate for sure.
Yeah.
So if you want to see that video, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, comment, let us know. You know, give us some engagement, because watching this video is also cool, but letting us know, we have a quick feedback loop to make sure that we're going in the right direction. Yeah. And if not, we should shift gears and do something different, right? But we are testing.
We're always learning. We're always learning. So
thank you guys for tuning in. We appreciate it, for making it this far, as I always say, because it's one thing to tune in. It's another thing to get to the end of the video, which is also super. I like to thank those people as well. So as always, guys, we'll see you on the next video. Take care and God bless.
Bye.